Hi, this is Eddie Deezen. You're listening to Breaking the Fourth Wall. I was Mandark in Dexter's laboratory. Ha 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 ha.
Total geekdom like you and I probably will. He still brings out his favorite 3 Star Wars movie moments, you know, because obviously the original trilogy is what he's going to remember the most. That's what you watched as a kid. Right. And then the other ones that have come out since, you know, if one of the Skywalker films has something important, then you can talk about it, and me and Stolle can geek on it, or, you know, whatever. Like, you could be the everyday guy version of what's your take on Star Wars, on what me and Stolle bring up being nerds. And so that way there's a balance going around on it. Is that, I mean, can we do that?
Balance in the Force.
That's right. Exactly.
Colin's on there. Are you hearing us, Colin?
Yeah, I'm here, man.
All right, there he is.
Yeah, we'll give our top 3, and Colin will just turn around like, you guys are fucking geeks, man. It's all about Babylon 5.
I've never watched that.
Boring as shit.
Babylon 5 was good, but Colin, did you get the gist of what we're getting ready to do?
I don't know. You guys are talking Star Wars. That's cool. I know Anakin. He's all right. I used to know him.
He's all right. That whole killing younglings thing, that was just a thing.
That was just a teenage phase he was going through.
He's a good
yeah.
And we don't want to ultra layer it, so that way we, you know, just make the episode appeal to just the top 1% Star Wars guys. So just give it a good gloss over or whatever, and move on to the next one. Like, so Colin, we're all going to talk about 3 of the Star Wars moments that kind of define Star Wars for you. What, you know, if what importance it has, and if not, then, you know, whatever. But we're just going to randomly pick 3 topics each, and kind of talk about why they're important for us as Star Wars fans, since it's May 4th.
That sounds great, man. I mean, I've seen all the movies, so I'm with the know, at least. I haven't seen all of the Rebels.
Okay.
But I have seen all the recent movies, and I have seen all the Mandalorian episodes.
Okay. All right. So you're basically in the same boat as Don, and which is, you know, the mass media stuff of it. Anything that me and Stolle might talk about might be like real deep nerd shit, but at least you guys are, you know, what you know, the masses would be thinking of or looking at. So that's cool.
Right. Yeah. Well, just don't get me going on Grey Jedi. All right.
They don't. I will fight you to the death if you say Grey Jedis are a thing.
Not sure what I walked into, but somebody's fighting to the death, and I'm all for it.
The whole belief that you could be a Jedi and use Sith powers because you're in the gray area is such bullshit, and goes against everything that fucking Jedi and Sith.
No, it's bull Sith.
It's
bull Sith.
That's right. Always pisses me off when people want to fight that argument.
I love that you're so passionate about it.
Yeah. And Stolle, for me and you, go ahead. Sorry, my bad.
Good.
It's just mixing the good and the bad, you know. I mean, it's like everybody has that little bit of evil in them. If they let it out or not is questionable. But that's kind of like what I view as the Grey Jedi.
Yeah, no.
Yeah, that's like the imperialistic view of it. Then there's also the view that it has been introduced in comics, it has been introduced in some canon. Even Lucas said it could be a possibility. So I mean, there's either the hardline take on it, or, you know, people open to possibility. You're never going to see one.
Oh, good. We're recording, so we already know this.
Yeah, I've been recording for a while.
Okay.
We were missing some good stuff.
I'll agree with you that Lucas said there could be non-Jedi or non-Sith Force users out there. I personally refer to them as wild Jedi.
Yeah, that's like if you're spiritual but not religious.
Right. You know, you may not subscribe to one or the other philosophies, but you still have the abilities. Those I'll agree with. But the idea of saying a gray Jedi, a Jedi Knight who skirts the line of dark side simply because they use it for good purposes.
Well, so it's the term that you have a problem with. The Jedi's good, so there can't be a gray Jedi.
Well,
he's labeling
or
it
a
that
gray
way.
Sith. We're talking about an in-betweener. We're talking about the tweeners.
Right, we're talking about the tweeners. If you want to say there's an unfocused Force user who did not subscribe to the ideals of the Jedi or the Sith, I'm fine with that. But using the term Jedi in a way that is not what a Jedi is not a Jedi. I don't care what color you put in front of it. You know?
And I had somebody discuss this one time, and they brought it about just because of their own personal religious dealings they had in life, and they're like, so we all agree that there are Jews, but there are Orthodox Jews, and then there are those who are a lot more lax, like they will work on Friday and Saturday and blah, 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 but they still observe the rules of being a Jew. So you're either Orthodox or you're not.
So you're talking about a Jedi on the council or a Jedi that just shows up on the major holidays.
Exactly. Right. You know, and there's Catholics that are the same way. So, I mean, Jedi at the end of the day,
I'm not
it is
currently a practicing Jedi.
or
I've heard it is.
in some people's family, like mine, we say we're recovering Catholics, you know, so maybe he's a recovering Jedi. He didn't get out of it, so.
I used to be a believer, but
it's funny you refer to it as a recovering Catholic because I was raised Lutheran, which layman's terms usually means backdoor Catholic.
Right. Yeah.
We're not going to get into the backdoor Catholic.
But were you an altar boy? No, but
but a lot less child molestation. That's all Lutheran is.
But
he was an altar boy.
I think if you want to get into like the true dogmatic terms of what has to be used and whether you're arguing as a full-on canon geek or somebody who is able to look at the minutia of the things and not really not everything has to have a hard label, but I get what you're saying, Stolle, about if you're using the term Jedi, then obviously they're already walking that path of the light. Right. So putting any kind of misnomer or, some sort of disclaimer at the beginning of it, they're automatically not a Jedi. So you can't use that term. So I do think it is funny, like on Star Wars pages where you see these full out battles and everything with people who really argue this point. And it's like, there is a gray area. We're just really getting hung up on what the labeling of it is.
Right.
Well, again, and I'm going to pass it to Ren, who joined us right now, who is our resident Sith Lord. But also I would defer to her point of view on this as well in a minute. But like I said, the Jedi have a creed. And so do the Sith, that they follow to the letter. And anybody who doesn't follow it is not part of that creed. So using a term like gray Jedi, where you're allowed to use light and dark side powers, by very definition, one of those abilities denies you being a Jedi. So the
Mandalorian, the group of Mandalorians that remove their helmets, are they less Mandalorian?
To the true Mandalorians, yes.
Yeah, they're not an actual Mandalorian at that point. Yeah.
The true Mandalorian?
Because that's not the way.
That's not
right. They're not doing it. They're following their own creed that way.
And that's one of the things that all of the debate groups and everything, people who believe in canon only and stuff like that, if you're really wanting to get at level 10 of being, balls deep on a Star Wars nerd, people get really hung up on the absolutes of what has been put out in whether it's certain books that are considered canon, certain parts of the movie that were canon, then they weren't, and now they are again. All of these debates and everything that go on, like one of the cool things about Star Wars fans is that they believe in the absolute definition of it, not just taking it at face value or looking like a level deep and seeing where the gray areas are. Well, in our world, we have gray.
That's the classic battle between good and evil. It's not the battle between okay and evil.
Yeah.
It's not a battle between mediocre and not so bad. It's good and evil. You got to draw lines, I guess. So yeah, I get
Yeah.
the point, Chris. I get, or
Well,
Stolle. Yeah, I get what you're saying.
Still, at the same time, you could consider Anakin a great Jedi for a while there until he finally flipped over to the dark side, because he was talking to that one, what's his name, Palpatine or whatever, and they were getting to some pretty evil shit there for a while, but he hadn't flipped yet. He hadn't become dark side just yet. So he was kind of gray at that time. Until he flipped.
By the definition, though, if you really break it down to its essentials, Anakin was not a Jedi.
I was going to say, because he never stopped being a Padawan. He was still.
Well, no,
he was still following around.
Well, he became a Jedi Knight by the Jedi Order, but his actions.
Did he finally? I can't remember. I hated him so much I didn't care.
In episode 3, he was already granted the rank of Jedi Knight, just not Master.
Okay.
When they forced him onto the council, but his ideals already broke him from the Jedi Order when he married Padme. Just
right.
alone, he was no longer a Jedi. Although the Jedi Council was not aware of it, he himself was no longer a Jedi.
Right. That's true, because you're not supposed to have loved ones, family, or anybody close to you. You're supposed to be a solitary person that's devoted to the Force and devoted to the Jedi Creed, and not have family.
What's that?
That's not in the creed. So the whole point, the thing about you can't be married thing, that was a thing of his particular order that he was in. Not being married is not in the Jedi Creed. It's interesting when you mentioned about the Mandalorians and how people see like the Mandalorian as being the Mandalorian, the guy who never takes his helmet off, and then these other, Yahoo group of Mandalorians who take their helmet off, and thus they are false Mandalorians because they take the helmet off. What people don't realize is that the hero in the Mandalorian is actually a villain.
Yeah, he's part of Death Watch, or that's the group of Mandalorians that he was a part of. Was actually
right. One of them calls him a child of the Watch, and she was actually referring to the Death Watch. So he is actually a member of a splinter group of Mandalorian extremists that fought with the real, quote unquote, the real Mandalorians from Mandalore, and they were kicked
Aren't they basically considered to be like zealots of some, they're like extreme hardcore. Yeah, okay.
Yes, they fought with the real Mandalorians in Mandalore, and they were kicked out, and so they were doing their own thing. But how many people really know about Death Watch? Only if you really dive deep into the comics and in the books. And I believe in one of the cartoons they touched on it a little bit, but if it's not really what?
In Clone Wars, they did a short series on the Death Watch.
Oh, okay, that's probably what I'm thinking of. But if they're not really drilling it pretty hard, then most casual viewers are not going to connect the dots. And I think the Mandalorians are a perfect example about creeds and cultures and different groups, because even in the cartoons, you could see that there are many different tribes of Mandalorians. They all have their different color schemes and their different armor and their different rules. So all their societies are different, but yet they are all Mandalorians and they all follow the Mandalorian creed. And the thing that's interesting with the Jedi is that they all follow the Jedi creed, check. They all use the light side, check. But then you have different orders of Jedi or different temples of Jedi, and each temple has their own rules. And I think that's where the you can't get married thing comes into play, because that was the temple that Anakin happened to be with. In the comic book series, the Jedi would actually get into fights with other Jedi groups and other light siders because of how they viewed the light side, and because of their culture and their laws. They just considered that particular group of light siders just not, they were wrong. They were just not well in tune with whatever, and they would fight with each other. Same way the Sith would get into fights with other groups of Sith. So it's really interesting because it's complicated, and to me that makes it more reflective and relatable than just sort of like a carbon copy, black hats versus white hats kind of story, which, I mean, I guess for like really, really young kids, that would be something that they could understand. But when you get into tweens and adults and so on, having that complexity makes it way more engaging and way more interesting.
All right.
Yeah.
I think for fans like us, being able to have those little nuances that we're able to see, because the beginning of Star Wars and even the movies, for the current generation or the prequel for the last generation, for them to be able to see it, it is more of a kid's movie than it is an adult's world. So you have to really dive into all of this secondary stuff to be able to find the real adult content once you've outgrown, your childhood introduction to it. I think that's what keeps us in.
I love the fact that we always refer to Star Wars as a kid's movie. Even the creator, George Lucas, always said he made it for kids. But what was the first major scene in Star Wars that we ever saw? A massacre of troops on a ship, followed by an old man slicing off an alien's arm with a lightsaber. That's child friendly.
Yeah, there is a little bit of a paradox with that. I don't know, maybe from like a film history kind of a point of view of it, looking at it that way, there had to be some adult scenes in the movie, because who was going to take the kids to go see it at that point in time? And this is the 70s, where Star Wars is not an actual franchise, or as soon as the name gets released, everyone's going to go see it. So they did have to make it so that way it would hold parents' attention, to get them coming.
That's right, Tommy and Carrie. They added that sex scene in Lady and the Tramp for mommy and daddy, so we'd be entertained too.
I also think that when the movies came out, the standard for what is acceptable for child audiences is grossly different today than what it was when I was growing up. Because when I grew up,
yeah.
I watched cartoons like Watership Down.
I watched Transor Z, where one of the robots shot torpedoes out of her tits.
Yeah, my ex-girlfriend loved Watership Down. That was one of her favorite cartoons, with bunnies that were killing each other and bloody and all kinds of crazy stuff.
Oh, I mean, just the blood and the drool and the violence and the emotion and getting caught in a trap and your friends trying to dig you out and you're choking to death and your tongue sticking out, flies are buzzing around. I mean, holy crap, Nowadays, tell me, would Watership Down be released as a kids movie by today's standards in its original format?
No, it would be NC-17 or some shit.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Probably not. But Blue Girl and the tentacle rape scene would be completely okay on Kids WB.
Jesus, here we go. So
that wasn't in Watership. There was no tentacles in Watership Down.
No, that's why I said Blue Girl.
Yeah, that's hentai shit, not Watership Down.
That would be totally okay on Kids WB. But no, let's get into the topic at hand here today. Of course, today is Star Wars Day. May the 4th be with you guys. We wanted to break down our top 3 scenes from any of the Star Wars medium, whether it be the films, the TV shows, the books, the Legends books, the comics, the video games, doesn't matter. Just three scenes that overall really defines Star Wars to us and the overall appeal to us as the fans to the film. So we want to go around going, number 3, number 2, number 1 with everybody here, but also down into the comments section down below. We would love to know your guys' top 3 scenes. Doesn't matter the medium, doesn't matter if it's canon or Legends. Just what are the 3 things that always stick out in your mind most when you think Star Wars and why you are a fan? Now, I will start this off with Chris, because it was his idea. Mr. Rudder, number 3 for you.
I always get stuck in the hot seat with this shit, man. So I would say that of the top 3 things that I love most about Star Wars, probably number 3 would be To me, it's like one of the greatest opening scenes out of all of the Star Wars movies. Or maybe not the best opening scene, but the most iconic. And that's in Empire Strikes Back, whenever you see the battle taking place on Hoth. That first 15 minutes that you go through in that series, that is like the epitome of what makes a great Star Wars movie, is that kind of scene, and another world you're seeing, or a different ecosystem, and you're able to see all of these new big machines from the Empire. You're able to see another take on Luke coming into his own. Some of his powers are starting to surface and really hone in, even though it's by accident. And you also see the iconic characters with Han and Chewie and Leia, 3PO and R2D2. They all have their moments in this opening scene, and it just lays the landscape for the rest of the movie. That's one of my favorite things all time. And Empire is still to this day my favorite movie out of everything, only because I saw that whenever I was 14 or 15. And I think for everybody, one of the first movies you saw as a kid is probably what stands out the most. But that opening scene with Empire, I think, is just phenomenal on Hoth. Seeing the AT-ATs for the first time and all of that shit, I thought was, that's one of my favorites, period.
Right on. Ren, your turn.
Oh boy. Oh, that is a really hard one. Well, I mean, I grew up with the movies when I was a kid, but the thing is that when I watched the movies, I loved the spaceships and the worlds and the world building and the lightsabers, but the characters and the storyline just did not resonate with me. There just was no real connection there. And it was actually many, many, many years later when I started getting into the books and listening to them. Actually, I had a horse at the time, and whenever I was working around the stable or cleaning stuff out, I would listen to the books on tape, like an actual tape with tape inside that you can pull out. Remember that? Long time ago.
You playing to a Teddy Ruxpin.
Yeah. And I would listen to it when I was dealing with the horse, or when I was doing yard work, any of that kind of stuff. And that's when it really started to grab me, because it was during that period where kyber crystals were becoming more of a thing. And I was learning more about the Sith culture and what they were about, and also the history about Darth Sin and how they came, how they were Jedi and then became Dark Jedi and then became Sith after they crash landed on the planet, and so on and so forth. And it was really that stuff that captivated me, and especially the lore side of things about how the kyber crystals were almost a type of life, and you would develop this relationship of communication between you and your swords. And there was a very close connection there. And I thought, wow, wish I had that in life. Like, I wish I had something that truly understood me, like on the level of a soul, and completely had my back, like a sword, like basically a magical plasma sword. And I thought, wow, that is really interesting. It's a very delicious blend of mysticism, magic-ish, and high technology, blasters and ships and all that other stuff. So it was, those are the things that really captivated me. But as a whole, no one real movie or scene kind of really jumped out at me. I mean, there were certain parts of it, especially some of the scenes with Kylo going on Exegol, and we get to see the Sith temple, and when he was riding down that giant levitating platform, that whole vibe, that whole scene. I mean, it was like, oh my God, this is like something that's almost out of Knights of the Old, the Old Republic. that game. You know, it's like just seeing it on the screens, a lot of the stuff that I've imagined in my head, that was really cool. But just only little snippets of parts that I thought really fit how I imagined it. But yeah, I'm hoping that's going to change because Disney, they're cranking out other TV series, and one of them is called The Acolyte. And I hope that it really brings to life that culture. And I feel like as a character class, the Sith are horribly underrated. Most people just see it as like a Darth Vader or a Palpatine, and they don't know anything about the Old Republic of Valkorion or any of that stuff, which who knows if that's going to be new canon or not. It's kind of a mess regarding canon right now. But my theory is that Palp was from the Old Republic, and he's basically a sorcerer who's found a way, a type of immortality by possessing bodies as he goes along.
Well, see,
And
that's interesting. Let me interject real quick. In the Legend series, obviously Palpatine was trained by Darth Plagueis the Wise, and of course there was a great book series about Palpatine's training with Plagueis, and of course Plagueis' downfall. For people who never read the books but have seen the films, of course, he mentions Darth Plagueis in part 3, where he's talking about how the Sith apprentice betrayed his master, and of course, his master was looking for a way of creating life through the Mandalorians. With the way Disney did the last 3 movies, and of course, the Return of Palpatine, along with your theory, let me ask you: do you think Palpatine was Plagueis?
that's a good one. I've heard a theory about that before by other people. Maybe it could very well be. I don't think there's anything that would say that's like impossible to have happened. But I mean, either way, I think it would be really interesting. But I also feel that the whole Palpatine thing and the whole Skywalker thing has just been beaten into mush. And I really hope that they will expand into other characters and other possibilities and other stories, because you know, I'm a very selfish person, and I play Knights of the Old Republic a lot. Well, actually, Star Wars: The Old Republic, the online version of the game, which is really fun. If no one has ever tried it, you can try it for free. It's a great game. Some say it's the best role-playing game ever made. That's some folks' opinion. But it gives you the opportunity. You can play a bunch of different Jedi types. You can play a Mandalorian. You can play a Imperial agent. And you can also play a bunch of different Sith types. I play mostly a Sith Marauder, but the way that I chosen to play her was that she's fairly reasonable. So she isn't this crazed, psychotic, omega, cruel kind of person that just wants to kill and destroy and screw with people and ruin everything. She's basically just a very driven soul who wants power and prestige and recognition. And if not that, then certainly the power is still there. But she isn't innately cruel. And as you play this game, you're given choices and you can pick which choice you want to make. And the game does give you feedback. So, and if you play the game being a reasonable Sith, you actually get feedback from the NPC characters, which is really interesting. And I have unlocked some great cutscenes with other NPC characters that were really interesting. And some of them really kind of heartfelt. Like one of them was with a Twi'lek slave that I freed. And the game gives you a choice. You can either make her your slave and abuse her and do all kinds of horrible things to her, or you can say, you know, let's be partners in this. And I chose the let's be partners thing. And after a few quests along, and you have to kind of reinforce that decision line through the choices given, it unlocked this really long scene, and it was about maybe a 4-minute long cut scene where she came up to me and she said, you know, I wish the universe could know you like how I have known you. And she went on and she would talk about the Sith and how they're just assumed to be horrible monsters. And she says, you know, but you're of the dark side, but you're not like this cruel psychopath. And I just wish the rest of the universe could know that. And I think that character type is so interesting that it would be so great if we could actually see that in a TV series. Some people think that would never happen, you know, that Sith are just designated to be lawful evil, and that's that. Anything other than that, then, you know, it's a different character type. But I don't know, I think that's boring.
That's fair enough. Let's go ahead and move along here. Don, your turn, number 3.
There is not an answer in the world that I can come up with that's going to compete with that previous answer. I cannot.
Oh my God, I'm so sorry.
I like the one scene where the guy shoots the other guy with the blaster. There is not a single intelligent response I can come up with after all that. That's great, though. I'm learning so much about Star Wars. I just like the movies. I don't know. Well, we can talk a little bit about what Rudder talked about earlier, because it's one of the you remember the first movies you see, and to be honest, that's the first. We didn't have HBO when I was a kid. We didn't have a VCR till I was a teenager. If we were to see a movie, we went to the movie theater. My mom and dad had 4 boys, and they did not want to fucking take us anywhere, because to go to a movie theater, for one, they couldn't afford it. For another, there are 4 of us little hellions that are going to be causing all kinds of trouble. So
like herding cats.
Exactly. One of the few movies I ever remember going to as a kid was Empire. With the whole family, we went to see that at a drive-in, and that's kind of why it stuck with me too, I guess. But they told me when I was like 3, we went to see Star Wars as well, but I don't remember that because I was fucking 3. But but they were the few, well, pretty much about the only movies we got to go see when we were kids.
Because of the films you guys actually sat down and watched instead of
right, exactly. And to me, I mean, the walkers, I guess there's another name for them that I don't.
Yeah, the AT-ATs. Yeah.
Those were so impressive to me because, of course, what year did Empire come out? I can't.
83.
83. I would have been 6 or 7.
It was 1980. 83 was Empire Strikes Back.
1980. So I would have been
okay. Yeah, not bad. Yeah.
Yes, that was. I don't remember much of it, but that was just something that really impressed me, was that scene with and that's one that stuck with me, and why I still continue to occasionally watch the movies. I was interested when Mandalorian came out. It's the only reason I got HBO Plus. Otherwise, I wouldn't have gotten it. I hope they come out with something new that I'm going to enjoy before too long. But
they did today. They just released the Bad Batch. I have yet to sit down and watch.
Good.
Now, is that live action or is that
spin off of the Clone Wars cartoon series?
Okay, because I haven't watched any of those because I've thought about trying it, but I don't.
You are denying yourself so much if you're
okay.
not.
On your suggestion, I will give them a shot.
I will tell you, as far as the modern canon cartoons, Clone Wars is worth it. Rebels is slow, but worth it towards the end. Do not bother with Resistance. Don't bother with it at all.
Okay.
Don't even add it to icon. Colin, what about you? What's your number 3? If we could tear you away from American Idol.
I'm sorry. I'm just trying to get my laptop to work. I guess for me, the beginning of it was like pretty cool because it kind of hooked me. It got me pulled into it. here was this young guy who was out in a desert planet and hanging out with his uncle and aunt. He didn't look like he was really too happy, but he was there and he was living and surviving. And here come these droids, and he's like, oh, cool, something to play with. And he didn't know the history of them or nothing. And I'm just sitting there like, wow, these droids are from space. He doesn't know what he's into, you know. This is going to be cool. And then so it kind of hooked me because I'm like, I saw that they were going to start having cool adventures, and I knew that they were going to make more movies. But of course, I was born in '77, so in 1980 I was 3. And I didn't really see it or acknowledge what it was till I was like 5 or 6 years old. And then I started catching on like, oh, wow, this is cool. These guys are having adventures with these robots and stuff. And I'm loving it, you know? So that was my number 3. That was probably my first introduction to the whole Star Wars, everything. And just the storyline of this dude on a desert planet and then this Obi-Wan Kenobi person and stuff. And I was like, there's some mystery here. This is cool. And I was just a young kid, but I could figure out that there was more to this than they were letting on right away. And I was hooked right away. I was hooked. I had to know more.
You know what I'm loving that I'm taking away from this particular episode in particular is the fact that I'm realizing that most of you guys are my age. We were all born in '77, you know. So.
Oh, 76 right here.
I was born in 1970, but yeah, I get it.
I'm used to being the old guy in the group. All right, cool.
Well, so whenever Don was saying he was 3, whenever, you know, or whenever he saw Empire and everything, but because you're last on this. I'll save this for next.
Well, that's what I was going to say is I was in the theater in 1977 for episode 4, but I was 5 months old, so I don't remember about it. My first memory of Star Wars was Betamax recordings that my mom had. So that was where I really started like understanding the Star Wars thing. And I think for number 3, and I'm going to make this short and sweet, for my number 3 is the scene on the Death Star where all the Imperial commanders are turning around talking about like how the rebels are not a threat to this Imperial station and stuff. And Vader and Tarkin come walking in. And my ultimate number 3 scene was when Vader walked up to that one commander and started force choking him, and it only said the simple phrase, "I find your lack of faith disturbing." Because that scene to me, with as quiet and calm as Vader delivered that line while he's choking the life out of this guy using force magic, you know, just proved to me how sinister and evil of a character Darth Vader was, how much of a force of will he was. Even back then in '77, when we had no real idea of his background, we just knew that this was not the guy to fuck with. And that one little calm moment where he just almost sarcastically was like, yeah, I don't like you picking on my religion, you know, was just enough to say, okay, this guy will murder everybody in this room and not give 2 shits.
That scene was fantastic, but later on in the movie, whenever he chokes the guy who's on the teleprompter, and he's like galaxies away, like we didn't realize it then, but if you look back on it now, like that's a magnificent show of force.
Mm-hmm.
That's a strong motherfucker.
Again, he delivered one of those dispassionate, almost not even giving a shit. Right. Words. It's like well, it wasn't when he choked the Admiral. It was another one where they lost the Millennium Falcon and he goes over to apologize to Vader. Next thing you see him drop dead and Vader just walks by and goes, "Apology accepted." You know what I mean?
Right. Yeah.
You know, but that to me was like the force to be reckoned with in Star Wars. It's like that was to me proving that Vader was the badass in that one scene. In the interest of time, because we only have a little bit of time on this special, I'm going to go back around, starting with you, Chris. Give me your number 2 and your number 1. Let's get both of them out at the same time.
Okay, yeah, cool. So number 2 for me was watching the first trilogy and everything, and then rewatching it again on VHS and all that bullshit. By the time that the prequels came out, and you're able to see again, there's R2 and there's C-3PO. Like, they're the only people who are present in every single scene. And I started talking about, what if the fucking movie's shown through the eyes of the droids? What if everybody's missing that? Like, this is their narration of the story.
I'll go one for you on that. I've always truly believed that it's not through the eyes of the droids because 3PO had his mind wiped. Really, the story, all 9 movies, since there are 9 now,
Is R2D2.
R2D2.
And
He
so
saw everything and never forgot it.
my second biggest thing that I really love about the fact is that George Lucas in a GQ interview, and then later in one of the big coffee table books, that Lucas does, like a biopic on the whole movie in paperback or hardback, since it's a coffee table book. The interview where he talks about the fact that the movie is narrated through the eyes of the droids. That was one of my favorite things to find out. And like what Ren was talking about earlier, now it's time to move on into other characters because, it's been beaten to death. But that's the whole point, because all of the 9 movies outside of Rogue and Han Solo, they are the Skywalker movies. So you have to see Luke Skywalker, you have to see Anakin. That's what completes all of it. But now that they're able to move on into other stuff, that's going to be the exciting part, which is like my favorite thing was everybody finding out as a whole and watching a weekly cliffhanger with The Mandalorian being done so well by Jon Favreau, doing it the original gunslinger cliffhanger version that Lucas envisioned. He wanted it to be a space opera, but a Western. And they really brought that back with The Mandalorian. And even though there's a lot of big, different scenes from each one of the movies that are defining, or it leaves questions or whatever, the fact that The Mandalorian came out and everybody tuned in week after fucking week after week, and Baby Yoda, and as soon as someone mentions something about Star Wars now, they show Baby Yoda or they show a Mandalorian meme or whatever. I think that's the coolest thing that's happened, being a lifelong person who was there in 1977, and I'm old enough to remember being there. I think that's like probably the coolest thing that they're doing with the whole universe, and hopefully Disney does they've done it justice so far, so hopefully they keep it up.
Right on. Ren, you're number 3 and number 2.
Oh, okay.
Or, excuse me, you're number 2 and number 1. Yeah, sorry.
I guess then I'll still stick with lore, because really it's the lore of that universe that really captivated me. Number 2 would be the world building, the landscapes, the different planets, the cultures, the whole vibe and the scenery that all these stories take place in. I think that is such a huge part to just making all the mechanics happen of everything. And of course, the Force and how that works in it, which I really hate the whole midichlorian thing. I wish they kept to the original 3 movies where it was this basically a mysterious force of nature.
I understand why Lucas did it. I don't agree. I don't like it either, but I understand why he did it. But
it disappeared really quick after episode 1.
Right. And the whole entire reason was because he wanted an ability. He wanted the throwaway line to explain why Anakin was even more powerful than Yoda. So
right. It was an easy explanation. It's like you have this much extra DNA. That was the easy way to do it.
Right. I mean, I hated the midichlorians too, but I understand his reasoning. He wanted a way of MacGuffining and quantifying how powerful Anakin was.
Yeah, and well, he did say later on that it was a mistake. The whole midichlorian thing. He wished he didn't do it that way. I think that they could have come up with a better reason for why Anakin was so powerful. And I think how powerful Anakin was, like trying to quantify that, was really unnecessary. I think they, show rather than tell. I mean, right there, that's one of the number 1 breaks in writing he made. All you have to do is to show the character doing amazing things. And I think they did that already with him and Obi-Wan, his piloting skills and everything else. So I think the whole midichlorian thing was unnecessary, but
I agree with you. I'm not defending it because I think it was a great idea. It's not. I just understand the reasoning to why he did it. But like you You could have found better ways of doing it.
It was a common thread that measured from one episode to the next, because in each one of the episodes there is a discussion a little bit about how powerful they are. They don't always mention midichlorians, but it is mentioned a few times throughout the series. So, I mean, it's just the one common thread that they can attach like a measurement to without getting super esoteric or, whatever about the explanation of the Force and its content.
Now, admittedly, I haven't watched the sequel trilogy as much as I have the original or the prequels, but if I'm not mistaken, even in The Last Jedi, Luke mentions the midichlorians.
Yes, that's why I'm saying it does get mentioned a few times more than in episode 1, but it's just that because all of these are attached to books as well. And in the books, they do go a lot more in depth as far as midichlorian count and all that kind of stuff. So, I mean, it does play. It is part of the lore, and it is kind of an over nerdy thing that isn't needed, but
I guess
they had to give an explanation.
If the Jedis are going to have a pissing contest, somebody's got to be able to measure it.
Yeah, exactly. It's the natural guy thing. We have to have a measurement, man.
I don't know. To me, that's just lazy writing, and I've done fan fiction writing. The whole point is to have this esoteric side of things and explore that and the magic of it. And to me, it's a force of will and drive and desire, and your connection to the Force. And through practice and training, you become stronger and you establish that. I feel like having the midichlorian thing is kind of like, oh, well, you were just born into it. That's that. And, you don't have to try that hard, and you're instant superhero. And I don't know. It just doesn't, to me, it breaks the story a little bit. But I haven't read any of the really recent books. I grew up reading the stuff written like in the 80s and the 90s is what I read before.
The Han Solo series and X-Wing and all that shit.
Yeah, and the Sith series is Lost Tribe of the Sith, which goes into the esoteric things, goes into Force spirits and some pretty interesting, weird, creepy, mysterious stuff, which is delicious.
And that's cool because they're really finding like there is a deeper version of the followers or the fans of this that really want to get into like the deep what ifs. And Lucas said in one of his interviews that he did that one of the things he wanted to avoid was such a large world of things going on is he didn't want to have a Battlefield Earth type of series. So he purposely did not do all of that detail just because of that. And then it was allowed to be like dove into a lot deeper by all the other authors who did all of the sub-series of the lore like you're talking about.
It wasn't just the authors and all. Before Lucasfilm was sold to Disney, George Lucas himself heavily endorsed people making fan things, whether it was writings or like videos or otherwise. He loved the fact that people played in his sandbox and expanded. He absolutely adored the fact that people were that passionate about something that he thought was just going to be a failed movie.
Yeah, he had no intention of it even getting past, going into actual filming. He just wanted the screenplay to be picked up so he'd have a foot in the door, to start landing scripts.
Yeah, when you look at it, it's really a marvel of media and mythos, and how you take a basic idea and a small story, eject it into a culture, and all these different groups take pieces of it and run with it and create these incredible expansions, like a spider web or ripples in a pond that just spread out and out and out and out. Like the whole kyber crystal thing and what the different colors of lightsabers means, that was created mostly by the video game industry. Because they needed to have that depth to make video games more interesting. And I think that's one of the reasons why we have why we had the beginnings of a deeper lore is because of the video game industry and the role-playing games. Because when you're building a game, you're basically falsifying a entire world that people have to interact with. And to make that more interesting, they have all this, delicious goodies, like the Sith Creed, for example, that was written for Star Wars: The Old Republic. It was written for a video game.
Yeah, they didn't actually have, because there was the handbook for the Jedi that showed their creed and teachings, and they also created the one for the Sith, and neither one of those would be available if it wasn't for the Old Republic.
Yeah,
so
exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's interesting. So it's that world building that I really love. But my number one thing, absolutely hands down, is the kyber crystals and the kyber crystal lore, and having this connection to your sword and having that crystal understand you at such a deep, deep level. And how the Sith go about bleeding a kyber and getting that crystal to understand them and where they're coming from. That whole process and the whole mystery around that, I think that's really interesting, and you can do so much with it.
I think it's a very interesting tie-in, because if you go back to the beginning of the samurai culture, which is about 900 till about the late 1700s, so you got about an 800-year history. But the beginning of the samurai and everything, the leader of a samurai clan, his sword had a very close personal attention. It was a part of his soul, and the reason it was is because he actually picked out the aggregate that the sword would be made by. And that's something a lot of people don't realize with the samurai, which I think is a really cool tie-in, because you can look at a lot of the Jedi teachings and see it as samurai if you know some of that history. And I think it's really cool that they found a science fiction approach to what something is actually not modern history, but it is history, and it is of Earth, and it's something they're able to draw from. There's always been a lot of similarities to Jedi and samurai to me.
You know what? I was going to say that when you were talking about the part where the story was seen through the eyes of the Jedi, a major inspiration, or not the Jedi, the droids, a major inspiration for Lucas in the filming with that intention in mind was old, I want to say Karasaka films, where you do Asian Laurel and Hardy people following this samurai troop. And the stories of those films were always told through their eyes. That's literally what Lucas did with 3PO and R2, was basically make them as Karasaka characters.
And those old Japanese movies, and also the Kung Fu theater, where the hero is actually watched by somebody else, and that's how you see the story. It's actually like the origins of comedy relief or comedic relief, which is what 3PO and R2D2 are through most of the movie. In their action scenes, they're the parts you laugh at more often than not.
Right, and we're poorly followed by some of the newer comedy release in Star Wars that just didn't live up to what Anthony did.
Like Jar Jar.
Yeah, I was gonna say, you were talking Jar Jar Binks. Jesus, I'm not even the huge fan nerd, but God, what a mistake that guy was.
Oh, he still wasn't as bad as L337. At least he served a purpose.
L337, yeah.
Oh God, yeah, I know.
That is my most hated Star Wars character of all.
Totally understand that.
They brought him back.
No, what pisses me off, the Jar Jar in the canon books, they gave a fitting end to Jar Jar. He became a street clown as punishment for putting Palpatine in power on Naboo.
Right.
Oh, nice.
Yeah,
so the return to Naboo and being totally belittled happened all over again for him.
literally, they punished him for his role of giving Palpatine power. But L337, the biggest thing that pisses me off is in Empire Strikes Back, when 3PO's talking to the hyperdrive, and he says to Han Solo, "I don't know where your ship learned to communicate, but it has a peculiar dialect." That line now has all new meaning to me, thanks to fucking Solo and realizing. Right. 3/7 consciousness was programmed into the Falcon,
which is a cool story, but they definitely
as that droid is.
Yeah, definitely a very cool story to understand some of that backstory of the Falcon, because it's such a part of the lore as well.
Yeah, and
that seeing that origin is pretty cool.
I never even put that together till you said that. That makes that now has new meaning to me.
Which is one of the things. I know a lot of people nowadays want to dog the Disney version of Lucasfilm and all the Star Wars films that have come out, because we've had 5 so far, and universally the only one that nobody bitches about is Rogue One. Everybody's got something to say about Solo. Everybody's got something to say about the sequel trilogies. But the one thing I've got to give Disney credit for, the Disney era of Lucasfilm, is they are tying back into the original lore in every which way they can, whether it's Vader's melted mask, L337 being the peculiar dialect of the Falcon, one line in the opening crawl of episode 4 becoming one of the most successful Disney Lucasfilm films. Like, no matter how you look at it, they are tying back to the original concept, and as great as they are tying.
And all of those films are still, each and every one of them, better than the prequel films.
I wouldn't say that.
I will.
and that's funny. That's a funny thing to bring up before everybody else does their number one. It's really weird how there's a big division on people who enjoy the original trilogy and absolutely hate the second trilogy, or there are people who do like the second trilogy and they think the first trilogy is like, okay, cool, I've seen that and it's old. Like there's kind of an interesting dynamic with that, because on some of the Star Wars groups, you see just as many people like the prequels because of Attack of the Clones, or because of the third one, and versus the original 3. There is some sort of a weird parallel there, and I think it kind of separates based on age.
Well, it separates based on age. You're right. Like the people that were born in the generation of prequels love the prequels usually more than the originals. Guys like us who grew up with the originals, of course, that's our Star Wars, which is why it pisses me off when guys like us or the guys from the prequels pick on the sequel trilogy, because you know what? I've got a daughter and a son who grew up in the sequel era, the Disney era Star Wars, and to them,
that's what they're going to like.
Yeah, that's they love the originals. They love the prequels, of course. But, you ask my daughter, her 2 favorite characters in all of Star Wars is Darth Vader and Rey.
Right. And there's a whole group of people out there who love Jar Jar Binks. Every Christmas, it's hard to find the little fucking bobbleheads of Jar Jar, from Whoop or whoever the fuck it is. You can't find them. You can't find the little plush toys and all that stuff. There's a huge segment of people out there who like him just because he was such a fuck up character.
Exactly. He was designed for kids. Of course, we're not supposed to like him because he wasn't designed for us. He was designed for little 5 to 10-year-olds who find, poopy jokes funny. That's what he was.
Yeah.
But Don, let's get your number 2 and number 1 in.
I guess for number 2, and I don't hate the prequels. I like the story of the prequels. I hate the fucking acting from the kid and the other kid that plays Anakin. But
they get so much hate.
Oh yeah, and it's fucking deserved.
Let me guess, Don. You don't like sand.
What's that?
You don't like sand.
It's coarse. It gets everywhere.
Right. Yeah. Right. But anyway, I will pick my number 2 out of episode 3, because the anticipation of Anakin getting the shit beat out of him and cut to pieces and burnt so that he can become Darth Vader, an actual badass character, that was definitely that. I don't even, that's might be close to number 1. That's real close, because that's taken a shitty actor with a mediocre character development and turning him into the badass that we know as Darth fucking Vader. And that was just a wonderful moment. So I had a lot of anticipation for episode 3 when it came out, just because I wanted to see how they got this whiny little shithead to be a badass. And I guess all you have to do is cut the hell out of them and burn them alive.
Is it
Let me ask you,
would that be one of the first times in movie history where everybody like was really anticipating the origin of a character?
Yeah, I bet it had to be, because I don't see how a fan of the original 3 movies cannot despise the Anakin character. Just it doesn't even have to be a fan of the original 3 movies, just on his own merit.
Right.
Because episode 2, there was really nobody you could root for worth a shit in that whole movie. That's why I hated that one.
Gotcha.
Well, let me ask you a question, Don. With Disney coming out with the TV series Kenobi, bringing back Ewan McGregor as Obi-Wan Kenobi, and announced that Hayden Christensen, the guy you hate so much, will be redonning the Darth Vader outfit in the Kenobi show. How are you looking forward to Anakin's return?
Is he putting the outfit on and just doing the acting and have somebody cool like James Earl Jones do his voice? I'm all for that.
I would imagine they would do it that way, or at least get the guy from the video game.
Totally cool with that. If we don't have to have any voice emoting from Hayden Christensen, I'm fucking on board. But if I have to hear that son of a bitch botch a line or poorly emote verbally, I'm out. And my number 1 moment is this discussion right here.
Wow.
If it weren't for Star Wars, I wouldn't have gotten to tell the world my hatred of Hayden Christensen.
Well, Don gave us a little dark end. He went a little dark side there. Colin, you going to bring us back to the light with number 2 and number 1? After you unmute and stop playing with your camera. I'm getting seasick.
Okay, here we go. Sorry. The tripod thing was giving me trouble. For me, I looked at it like Empire. You know, it kind of hit me after I got the gist of everything. How these droids were going on this adventures with this guy from this planet with all the sand, and I'm like, all right, this is cool. And then like Empire. And then they had, well, there was like the scene in the bar where I thought that was pretty cool, where they're all like playing instruments and stuff, you know. And the way that they started integrating, like, okay, Luke and Leia are family, you know, you started seeing all that stuff going on. And then they had the interaction with all the Ewoks and stuff. And I just thought, man, Empire is pretty cool. You know, it kind of laid out the whole universe for all the fans. And that kind of pulled me in even farther, you know. So that whole scenario with Luke being there, and he was studying and trying to figure out what the heck this force was and how to use it and everything. And he was getting better, but he was still studying, and he wasn't quite there yet. But his adventure was working, and it was coming along. His storyline was coming along, and it was getting better every time. Every time that, you know, the first movie was good, second movie was even better, I thought, you know, and it was because of that. It was because they were really drawing you in with Luke's character. And I love that about it. So then for me, the number 1 thing was when I waited and I wanted to see Return of the Jedi, because I knew that finally his training was going to be up and he was going to actually become the Jedi that we've all been waiting for him to be, you know, because he went with Yoda and figured all this stuff out, figured out exactly how to be, you know, a Jedi. And to see him show up there at Jabba's palace and be like, all right, you got my droids, like, what's up? I'm gonna beat your ass. You know, it's like, here comes our hero to kick everybody's ass. Look the hell out, because it's on, you know. And that, for me, that was it. I was like, yeah, that was my number 1 right there. Here he comes. He's got the hood. He's got his lightsaber. He's gonna shove it up his butt. So look out.
Nice. Well, for my number 2, I kind of had to make it a 2-parter. I was originally going to make it as number 2 and number 1, but I decided to mix it together and came up with a different number 1. And the reason that I decided to mix number 2 together was because of the fact that they mirror each other so well. And that is the hallway scene of Rogue One with Darth Vader and the hallway scene with Luke Skywalker and the Mandalorian.
I think your cat's trying to teabag you.
Probably. She wants to be on camera too. The fact that they mirror each other so well that you can see how light side and dark side, a Skywalker is a Skywalker. and the fact that they both gave us something as fans that we wanted to see, the things that we saw in when we read the comics, the things we saw when we read the books, but we never really got to see on film, was that the most powerful Jedi and Sith Lord in the galaxy finally able to wreck shop the way you've always heard they do. When Vader was tearing through those rebels trying to get that Death Star plans, the way he was killing those rebels was damn near horror movie quality, and then in turn, everybody was so disappointed with like Luke in Last Skywalker and Rise of Skywalker, that when you got to the episode of the rescue on Mandalorian, and that couple minutes of just seeing a green lightsaber and a black cowl just tearing the shit out of those dark troopers, that was price of admission in both of them. And I think, even in modern Star Wars mythology, those are just iconic scenes, because you finally got to see the hero and the villain as you always imagined them to be.
I was kind of jealous about how some people's first exposure to a Star Wars movie, which being Rogue One, there's a certain age group there that's their first like in theater seeing of a Star Wars movie.
Right.
That they get to see Darth Vader just go completely ham. And we had to wait, 30 years to fucking see any cool scenes except for between him and Luke. That was their first glimpse of Darth Vader.
Even in the prequels with Yoda, I always wanted him to see him do more. I mean, there was the fight with Count Dooku, which was not really shit. Because Yoda was supposed to be the motherfucking man.
I don't know, man. That fight with Sidious in the council chamber.
That was a good fight, and it seemed like
that was a good fight, but
the only thing that shadowed that was Obi-Wan and Anakin. That they should have that fight happen separately, because it got shadowed by what Ewan and Hayden was able to do with that fight.
Because everybody was wanting to see Darth Vader be born.
Right.
It seemed like they kind of underplayed some of those original sword, the lightsaber duels and everything. And Anakin was able to win them in a few moves, like how he takes out Dooku and everything else in the second fight. Like they really underplayed that kind of as a show of strength. They were actually showing how strong he was becoming. Yeah, taking out Dooku that way.
I thought Grievous was beaten far too quickly, because the four-arm lightsaber duel, I was excited about that fucking shit when it started.
Yeah, but you know what? The way the Grievous fight ended, I was very satisfied with, when Obi-Wan had to use a blaster and then afterwards throws it away and goes, "Oh, so uncivilized." Like that was perfect Obi-Wan.
True.
And the fact that he is Anakin's, he is Anakin's master. So to be able to get Anakin on board to where they even make the comment that he's as good as Yoda, Obi-Wan has to be a great duelist with a lightsaber also. He has to be that good if he's teaching Anakin to become that much of a badass.
So my number one has nothing to do with any scene in particular, but the Star Wars fandom and Star Wars in general. And that is the fact that a small-time independent film producer and director and writer created something that had transcended beyond film and has become literally American folklore. Not even American, but full world folklore. The reason we have a Star Wars today, the reason we're all sitting here right now discussing Star Wars, is because it's had such a cultural impact for 40 plus years, and continue to inspire imagination and creativity, and continue to be a vessel for people to let out their creative juices and everything else. Is just, it's far beyond anything that anybody could ever imagine. So my number one is plain and simple George Lucas. Without him, there is no Star Wars.
True.
The maker.
And considering the fact that he was able to actually put the plot line and everything together, because episode 4, all of this was already kind of outlined. He just continued to flesh it out over the next 30 years. Episode 4 wasn't by accident. He did have the outline of the other stories in place. He just actually fleshed that one out. That seemed to be what had his attention at that moment. And I think that's a really cool thing. The fact that he was that fucking visionary, that here we are, was it 43 years later since the first film?
44.
And yeah, and so and he had, you know, outside of Mandalorian and Rebels and all this other stuff, but those 6 movies that we all hold near and dear to our heart, he had that stuff well in place, really, to the fact that he was just able to go to the drawing board and make sure that special effects caught up with his vision before each one of the movies came out.
Absolutely. But guys,
I think we do have to have an honorable mention of the robot chicken versions of Star Wars. And if you haven't seen those, those, you gotta fucking see them. They're fabulous.
Well, if we're gonna honorable mention Robot Chicken, I think we have to give the credit where it's due too. We also have to mention Family Guy's Star Wars trilogy of Blue Harvest,
which was fine, which was all fun and good. In fact, I watched Blue Harvest this evening. But the Robot Chicken version, way fucking funnier.
And Robot Chicken just takes the cake on any. If they do it first, it's going to be funnier than anybody else who does something close to it.
Right. When Palpatine calls Vader a walking fucking light bright.
You got to smell like feet and burnt bacon.
Yeah, you can't beat their writing, man. It's awesome.
If we're gonna honorable mention Family Guy, and if we're gonna honorable mention Robot Chicken, we got to honorably mention the film that is pretty much the cinematic version of this show. Guys, all hail fanboys. If you haven't seen it,
don't forget Spaceballs.
Oh yeah, we've got to mention Spaceballs.
Spaceballs.
Well, I'm my own best friend.
He shot my hair.
I hate yogurt, especially with strawberries.
I see your sports is as big as mine.
Please, just plain yogurt.
How many assholes we got on this ship anyway? No, I knew it. I'm surrounded by assholes.
We're surrounded. The ship is being invaded by space herpes. Yeah.
What's happening? It's Megamaid, sir. She switched from suck to blow.
Mel Brooks's lawyer, his name was Larry Schwartz, or Lawrence Schwartz. He's who the Schwartz is named after in that movie. May the Schwartz be with you was actually
because he had to have a big Schwartz in order to make.
Yeah.
I just thought it was some kind of Jewish reference. I don't know.
And he was heavy duty all the way up in the Hollywood community and everything, as far as like an advisor and publicist and all this other stuff. I think he was even an agent to quite a few. Like, he was originally Mel Brooks's agent, but like he was a heavy player in Hollywood all the way up until he died, which was like, I think he was like 90 fucking something, 92, 93, but he was a player all the way up until the end.
I'll tell you what, though, Spaceballs is a sore subject for me, only for this factor. I saw the film when it first came out when I was a kid, and I watched it all through the years off and on, not as much as Star Wars, but it was still something. I love Mel Brooks, and Spaceballs, obviously being a parody of Star Wars, means I loved it too. My favorite all-time Mel Brooks film was History of the World Part 1, but either way you look at it, it took many years. It wasn't until I was about 23 years old that I caught a obvious pun in that film, and that was Prince Valium. I never understood why Prince Valium was, lethargic and fall. I finally put it together at like 23 years old, drunk, watching the film. I'm like, fuck, Valium, duh.
Mama's little helper in the flesh. That's right.
We all get things in our own time, Stolle.
Wow. But of course, guys, that's going to end this episode. I hope you enjoyed our little one-off for the May 4th. May the 4th be with you. Guys, go out there, watch Star Wars, spread the love, spread the thing. Let us know in the comment section your top 3 scenes or things that really mean the most to you as far as Star Wars is concerned. Of course, you guys can find everybody. I'm going to let them give them their round outs, starting with Mr. Don Smith.
You can't find me anywhere anymore. I've disappeared. But hey, happy Cinco de Mayo, because fucking I'm celebrating tonight.
This is a Star Wars show. There is no Cinco de Mayo. Tomorrow is Revenge of the 5th.
Oh no, it's Cinco de Mayo.
Well, drinking wise, Revenge of the Fifth works a different way too.
That's true. That's true.
And Mr. Rudder.
Yeah, you can find the show What's Your Effing Binge on iTunes, Spotify, everywhere you find good quality podcasts. This week, we're launching the new radio show. I've been talking about it for a while, but we have a radio show that's sponsored by Spotify that is part live DJ, radio, call-in request, and podcast, all blended into one, talking about my favorite subject. What are you fucking binge watching right now?
Right on. And Mr. Colin.
Yeah, well, you can find me right here on Breaking the Fourth Wall with Chris Stolle and all of our other characters, as well as on Facebook under Colin Washburn with a K, and on YouTube. And if you want to message me about something positive or just chit chat about some Star Wars stuff, or you just want to get a message to one of the other people, get a hold of me at colinwashburn@gmail.com.
And last but certainly not least, Miss Wren. Or should it be Darth Wren? I don't know which I should refer to you as.
Oh, Darth Wren, definitely. Lord Wren, Master Wren, any of those would be suitable, yes. You could find me on Facebook. I am Wren Tuathadi Dannon. And I love talking about Star Wars, psychology, orchids. I grow orchids. So yeah, shoot me a line and we can chat.
Right on. And of course, guys, if you enjoyed this episode in any capacity, hit that thumbs up button, share, comment, subscribe. Check out all the other great podcasts of Breaking the Fourth Wall Entertainment, including Breaking the Fourth Wall Weekly, which will be returning this Sunday. Part of the reason we did this one off is because we missed last week, but don't worry, we will be back this Sunday. And of course, guys, if you enjoy this in audio format, just look us up on Breaking the Fourth Wall Entertainment on Spotify, Pandora, iHeartRadio, Anchor, Pandora, all of them, anywhere quality podcasts can be heard. And also, personal plug, thanks to Chris Rudder, I do on Monday nights do a radio program on blindcaferadio.net called Raise the Underground, where I take all the great rock and metal and shove it straight up your no-no holes. And one of my specialties is I do showcase and spotlight underground acts, bands you do not hear regularly on the radio. So make sure you're checking that out. It is every Monday night on blindcaferadio.com from 11 p.m. till 1 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. Till then, guys, may the fourth be with you, and we will see you on Breaking the Fourth Wall Weekly. Until then, have a good week. Talk to you later.